Hi Adam, hi Delona. Excuse me. Here is a first pass at the storage space. I've got two layouts to show you, C1, which is this one, and C2. Now the way to think about these is try not to focus on what I've put where, try and focus on the fundamentals of the layout. So wherever Elfa described these gaps between the uprights as a bay, so that's a single bay, that's another bay, that's another bay, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 bays here. So that's the kind of language we can use to discuss Elfa layouts. So where I've put bikes and where I've put golf clubs, where I've put clothes is largely interchangeable. What is the key difference between the two layouts? C1, I've started by filling the end walls. Let's just flick to C2. C2, let's just put that in transparent. Yep. C2, I've filled the long sides first and then sort of worked out what I can do with the end walls. So I'm going to come back to that. The other sort of common thing between the two layouts is that I have a sort of a height at roughly the same height as the doors. So, sorry, I didn't explain that well. I've got a rail at door height, pretty much all the way around, and then 1 metre above that I have a high rail which covers the high storage. So let's go back to C1 and I'll talk you through what I've got there. So what's the best way of looking at this? I'm going to jump into a section view quickly, and let's go for a section on the long view. Okay. Both these models are a little slow and chuggy because there's quite a lot in there. So as you walk in the double doors, to your left you will see golf bags and bikes, and what I've put next to the bikes is some storage boards and storage tracks. Now the storage boards could be used for there's all sorts of fittings and fixtures that you can put onto the storage boards, but they could be used for bike tools, bike maintenance, lights, batteries, anything like that. And below that, although I've shown some gripping tool holders, this is a standard assembly model for me, what might be useful is just an array of hooks there for cycle clothes, bike helmets, things like that. Above the golf clubs I have shown what Elfa call a basket shelf. It's a wire shelf with a 100mm lip at the front. Other clients have found that really useful for gloves, hats, scarves and sportswear. So it could be that your bike helmets, bike gloves and things like that are in there. It could be golf odds and ends stored in that product. So again, let's just try and focus on layout. So C1, layout 1, I'm focused on the end walls and then filling in the middle. I've squeezed in some baskets here. No suggestion as to what they might be used for really, but perhaps clothes, hats, scarves, that kind of thing. Possibly sort of golfing shoes. Where I've shown gliding baskets, these could also be shoe racks, gliding shoe racks. I'll try and show you one of those on a later example. Might be good for golf shoes. over near the dog wash, I've shown simple flat shelves on C1. I'm just going to jump into another section view so we can look at this slightly differently. I think I'll start by swapping sides on that section view. There, we're just at the end of the dog wash there. So yeah, nothing's really changed in the corner there. We've got a sofa, so we're probably looking to have some clothes over there rather than the shelves that I've shown on C1. C2, I think I have shown clothes there, so that's perhaps a better use of that space. On the opposite wall, more storage boards. You'll see that I've used the same sub-assembly model. I've shown lots of tubs, but there are a whole host of hooks, brackets and holders that can go on these storage boards, and I can show you some reference images for those. Down this wall I've shown mesh baskets for, again, general storage of hats, coats, gloves. People use these for storage, cleaning products inside cupboards. But again, the focus for this conversation is the layout. Is focusing on the two short end walls the best thing to do, or is C2 the best thing to do? I'm going to go out of the, excuse me, I always end up coughing and yawning in these videos. I don't know why, I'm not a natural performer. Let's get rid of the space at the moment so we can just look at that. So the high shelf on both C1 and C2, it's typically 3 layers of 500mm deep shelves. So that's 500mm front to back there. And on both C1 and C2, I've just maxed out the high storage above the sort of 2 metre mark as much as possible. Approximately 350mm between the shelves, and I just sort of had my work set out on both C1 and C2, centering these above the 2 slightly different doorways. Okay, so just trying to remember that these bays, that perhaps should be clothes and shoes opposite the sofa. This could be anything. It could be shoe racks, could be gliding shoe racks, there could be gliding shoe racks, gliding baskets here, there could be clothes hanging here, there could be clothes hanging here. Let's go over to C2. So, what's different about C2? I've focused on the two long walls, and my gut feeling is that this is giving a better use of the storage space. So I know these views are slightly complicated. I'm going to jump into a section view quickly so we can perhaps see into that and get our bearings a bit quicker. Okay, so double doors. As you go left into the double doors, there's a focus on golf equipment, and the thing you notice about C2 is the shelves on the long back wall and the long facing wall go all the way through. There's a non-standard bay here, and they're always non-standard length, that to fill in that gap at the end. That bay will be cut to size on site. It slightly changes what you can and can't fit in there. I've shown some just clothes hanging, but the bulk of the clothes storage, one of the reasons I like the straight through design on the long walls is that it doesn't give you this corner of the dog washer. You've got some fire extinguishers there at the moment which I haven't shown, but it's a slightly sort of awkward to get to corner, and those are generally, in my experience, a good place for long hanging with perhaps less frequent use. So if there were some very heavy sort of winter coveralls or coats, waterproofs, that might be a good position for them there. More general hanging for sort of jackets and stuff above these baskets. These don't have to be baskets, it could all be, it could be double height hanging. You don't have to have 2 bays of baskets. You could have 1 bay of baskets, 1 bay of hanging. You could have gliding shoe racks. I'm just going to very quickly find pictures of gliding shoe racks. Bear with me, I can get to that relatively quickly. On the other screen, I'm just looking at my website. I'm going to bring that over now. So yeah, just a quick look at some Elfa gliding shoe racks. One design is for flat shoes, and there is another gliding, these are all Elfa products, they all do slightly different things, and there is, that's not a very good image, there is also a gliding shoe rack for heels, I think, yeah, it's that design there, that's a very old design, that was not made anymore. So this is very effective for heel shoes, but we're probably not talking about heel shoes in the garage. So all sorts of different ways of organising shoes with Elfa. But the gliding rack is mainly designed for flat shoes. Okay, so let's get back to the basic layout. I liked the idea of putting shoes in this, clothes in this slightly awkward corner for where the dog washer is. Let's just switch over to the other section view. We're going to look at the other side. Okay, so there's no changes at all to the sort of layout there, but on the facing wall, and this could be the golf wall, so I think this stretch of wall, yes, because you've got a single door, this is bigger than the area on the opposite side where I have currently shown the golf stuff. So you could put bikes on the smaller side, golf stuff on the bigger side, if that's reflected the family's interests a bit more. But these are, I'd forgotten when we spoke that there is a vertical bike rack, there is a horizontal one as well, which is slightly less efficient space-wise, but if you wanted to cram in a bunch more bikes, there is a vertical bike rack that will do that very nicely. Again, above these child bikes, some bike related sort of maintenance storage on those boards. Could be cans of oil, could be some basic tools, puncture repair equipment. It could also be somewhere for storing bike helmets, high-vis stuff, anything like that. Both designs have C1 and C2 high storage all the way round. I've shown above the door 1, 2, 3 shelves at 350mm nominal distribution, and there are some more shelves above the dog washer on both designs. What else can I tell you about this? Just a brief talk about that end wall. Again, I'm going to jump in and out of the section view, and we're going to look at that end wall. In fact, that's a nice way to look at the golf and the cycling stuff together. Let's do that. So, on the end wall, just as a way of using this, I've shown some, there's a slight error in how I've mounted that. Can I correct it quickly? I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I've just corrected that little error on, let's get that out of the way. Mesh baskets, centrally mounted, they can go anywhere along that wall. I just thought it was a nice way of using up that little bit of blank end wall there, because that could be cycling or golf related stuff. And as I said a minute ago, you've got slightly smaller expanse of wall on this side than you have on this side. So perhaps if golf is the main family enthusiasm, golf should go along this wall and a slightly smaller array of bikes and related equipment on this wall. I think that's about all I can say. So I think a fundamental choice is, let's just jump out of this and we'll put that in transparent. So the fundamental choice is, do we start as a base layout of having storage along the long walls and then we just fill in on the short walls, or as with C1, is the layout based around the short walls and we're filling in on the longer walls? My gut feeling is that C2, starting with the long walls, works better. Just click the wrong button there. Okay, so yeah, assuming just for a minute that you agree with me that C2, starting with storage along the long walls, is the better layout, we then need to decide if opposite the sofa is primarily for clothes, what do we want there? Is it long hanging and short hanging? Do we want any baskets at all? Do we want baskets and shoe racks? Or, you know, what are we going to do with this sort of clothing area? Swapping to the other side, bikes and golf, which side is best for which hobby? There isn't really much landing on the end wall, but these mesh baskets are a useful way of storing all sorts of hobby related stuff. It could be hats, gloves, could be tools, could be bike oil, all sorts of things, bike cleaning products, golf cleaning products, could be golf balls, I don't know. So I'm going to give you a 2D drawing of each. I might even try and capture the post and send you hard copies to scribble on. The sooner you can get me sort of feedback on these basic layouts, the quicker I can get back to you with the revisions and we can have a second review. Perhaps if we go on a Teams meeting we can talk about the 3D model like this. I can spin it round and, you know, make changes as we're talking. Just looking forward to hearing back from you. Speak soon. Bye bye.